The glass door of the beauty studio slammed so hard that a crooked poster on the wall shuddered, and the girl sitting in the makeup chair flinched, nearly knocking over the tray of tools. A woman with disheveled hair stood on the threshold, nervously squeezing the keys in her hand as if she were about to throw them at one of the staff. The parking lot near your center is completely blocked. I had to leave my car in the yard next door, she said instead of greeting them, breathing heavily. I hope my appointment hasn't been cancelled because I'm 15 minutes late. Alina silently put down her eyeshadow palette, asked the previous client to wait a little, and stepped toward the reception desk. Working in the service industry had long ago taught her not to react to other people's emotional outbursts. The town was living its usual Saturday rhythm. Outside, cars moved along Kievska Street. People hurried about their business, and inside the salon the air smelled of hairspray and fresh coffee. Good afternoon. Are you here for makeup? The artist asked calmly, checking the schedule on her tablet. Please take a seat at the free mirror. I'm just finishing with the girl before you. The woman took off her coat, hung it on the rack, and sank heavily onto a tall stool. She looked about 40. Well-groomed skin, neat manicure, a designer bag on her lap. A typical regular customer of expensive places. Alina quickly finished the powder, settled the previous client, and washed her hands carefully. An hour of painstaking work lay ahead. We need to do something special, the new visitor said with a sigh as the artist draped a protective cape over her shoulders. Today is our 10th wedding anniversary. My husband booked a table at a restaurant outside the city, so I want to look perfect. Alina smiled warmly. She liked working with women who were preparing for celebrations. Such appointments usually came with pleasant conversation, gift ideas, and a light atmosphere. She took a cotton pad, moistened it with micellar water, and gently began cleaning the client's face. 10 years, she said, keeping the conversation going. Do you have a specific look in mind? We could emphasize the eyes or choose a brighter lipstick. Better the eyes. My husband can't stand too much makeup on lips. He says then he's afraid to kiss me. The client laughed softly, relaxing under the artist's warm touch. My name's Oksana, by the way. Nice to meet you, Oksana. While the brush softly blended foundation across her face, Oksana didn't stop talking, about finding the right dress, about how hard it was to find shoes in the correct size, about relatives who kept pestering her with advice. Alina listened half-heartedly, nodding where needed, her thoughts drifting elsewhere. Tonight was a special evening for her too. A year ago, fate had brought her together with Victor. The memory returned like a warm wave. It had been a rainy evening. She had been walking home from work, burdened with bags of cosmetics, when she accidentally dropped her keys into a puddle by her apartment building. A tall man in a dark coat helped her gather the scattered things, carried the bags to her door, and the next day waited outside the salon with a large cup of cappuccino. Victor had seemed reliable right away, calm, confident, working in logistics, which explained his frequent business trips and irregular schedule. Their relationship developed gradually, without unnecessary drama. He honestly admitted he had a failed marriage behind him. He had divorced long ago, had no children. His ex-wife, supposedly, lived abroad. Alina was fine with that story. At 32, she no longer searched for fairy tale princes. She valued stability, support, and the chance to rest her head on a strong shoulder after a hard day. Victor didn't promise stars from the sky, but he always helped with small repairs, carried groceries, and asked about her well-being. The only thing that made her uneasy was his refusal to make their relationship public on social media. He explained it simply. Happiness loves silence. Besides, colleagues gossip too much. Can you believe it, we nearly broke up on our 5th year together, Oksana's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. The client was looking at her reflection while the brush applied eyeshadow to her eyelids. The crisis was terrible. He was always at work, I was nervous, but we got through it. Now my husband is simply wonderful. Of course, there are small issues, who's ideal? Alina gave a short nod and carefully shaded the dark pigment in the corners of the eyes, adding a little shimmer to the center of the lid. The work required concentration. To make the makeup match perfectly, it would help to see your dress. Do you have a photo on your phone? She asked, stepping back to check the symmetry. Oh, of course. I took one yesterday in the fitting room. Oksana reached for her bag, took out her smartphone, and began scrolling through the gallery. The dress was dark blue, with a deep neckline. And here we are at a birthday party with our mutual friends last month. Look at us, such a beautiful couple. She turned the phone screen toward the artist. Alina leaned closer, ready to make another compliment. The words froze in her throat and turned into a dry, painful knot. Her heart gave a sharp against her ribs and, for a second, seemed to stop. On the screen, with his arm around Oksana's waist, stood Victor. The very same Victor, with the same familiar smile and the small mole above his left eyebrow. He was wearing a gray cashmere sweater, one Alina had given him for New Year's. She remembered choosing it carefully in the mall, how happy she had been when the size fit perfectly. The air in the salon suddenly felt thick and sticky. A ringing flooded her ears. Alina blinked, hoping it was just an illusion. A stupid hallucination from exhaustion. But the image didn't change. The man in the photo was looking straight into the camera, radiating confidence and calm. Very beautiful couple, Alina managed to say, her voice treacherously weak. Right? Oksana smiled proudly and blocked the screen. Though my husband hates being photographed. Alina forced herself to continue the makeup. Her hands trembled slightly, but she turned away, grabbed her tools, and kept working. Inside, everything was collapsing. A year. A whole year of lies. Business trips, night shifts, sudden calls, excuses, delays. Everything now fit into one disgusting picture. Victor was not separated. His wife was not abroad. She was sitting right here in the chair, waiting for the perfect makeup for their wedding anniversary. Alina had to keep working. Professional ethics did not allow her to throw a scene or kick the client out onto the street. She took a deep breath, filled her lungs with the smell of cosmetics, and forced her face into calmness. The application of makeup turned into an automatic process. The movement stayed precise and professional, but her mind was elsewhere. Oksana kept talking, not noticing the sharp change in the artist's mood. Every word felt like a whip, leaving invisible wounds. He's been so attentive lately, the woman said, narrowing her eyes while Alina applied mascara. He used to forget anniversaries, but this time he organized everything himself. Booked a table at a forest resort. Imagine the prices, but he said nothing is too much for me. The only annoying part is the endless trips. He works in logistics, always driving to different cities. Poltava. Kharkiv. That was where Victor supposedly went on business trips, when in reality he was simply returning home to his lawful wife. Alina remembered baking a pie a few days ago, waiting for her lover to come back from another trip, ironing his shirts because he complained about not having time. The feeling of her own naivety and stupidity swept over her. Hard, I guess, when your husband is always away? She asked, keeping her tone level and distant. I'm used to it, Oksana sighed. At least he earns well. Last month we finished the bathroom renovation, finally replaced the tiles. He controlled everything himself, bought the materials. You can't deny he's practical. Alina nearly dropped the palette. Last month Victor had cancelled 3 of their meetings in a row, blaming work emergencies and tax inspections. As it turned out, he had been choosing bathroom tiles. How ironic. The final touches were contour and nude lipstick. The job was complete. Alina stepped back, allowing the woman to admire the result in the mirror. Oh wow, this is fantastic, Oksana said, pressing her hands to her cheeks, genuinely delighted. Her eyes shone, and the fatigue disappeared. You're a real magician. My husband will definitely lose his mind. He will, no doubt, Alina thought bitterly while removing the cape. The client paid in cash, leaving a generous tip, thanked her repeatedly, and promised to recommend the salon to her friends. Then she picked up her bag and walked lightly to the exit. The glass doors closed behind her, cutting the studio off from the street noise. Left alone, Alina sat down on a stool. Her legs wouldn't hold her. Her gaze wandered over the scattered brushes, open jars, and cream containers. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her work apron. A message from Victor. Sunshine, plans changed a little. I can get to you no earlier than 9 p.m. Bought wine and your favorite pastries. Miss you terribly. Alina stared at the screen, feeling numbness slowly turn into cold, icy rage. At 9? Of course. Right after he celebrated the anniversary with his wife, sat in the restaurant, gave a toast to the strength of their family, and then invented some urgent matter to rush to his mistress, the convenient fool who asked for nothing and always waited. Her fingers quickly typed a reply. She wanted to write everything, spill the truth, tell him where to go, block his number forever. But her thumb stopped above the send button. The text was deleted. Alina stood up, walked to the sink, and turned on the cold water. She washed her face for a long time, rinsing away the remains of her own makeup, the fatigue, and the confusion. In the mirror stood a pale but determined woman. The hurt burned in her chest, demanding release, but throwing a tantrum over the phone felt too petty. Victor deserved a different ending. Only 3 hours remained until the end of her shift. She cancelled her last appointment, apologized to her regular client for unforeseen circumstances, quickly tidied the table, washed the instruments, put everything in order, and locked the studio, turning the key twice. The streets of Brovary greeted her with a cool wind. Gray clouds covered the sky, promising evening rain. She walked along her familiar route past the supermarket and the CAF where she and Victor used to drink lattes on weekends. Every place now felt poisoned by lies. At the bus stop, she opened a taxi app. The restaurant Lasova Pollyanna was on the outskirts of the city. An expensive place with wooden gazebos, live musicians, and private banquet halls. Alina had never been there, but she knew the location well. She entered the address. The car would arrive in 5 minutes. Her plan was still blurry, undefined. She wasn't going to burst into the hall and make a scene in front of everyone. That would humiliate her first of all. But seeing the traitor there, meeting his eyes, making him understand that the game was over, that was what her wounded pride demanded. In the back seat of the car, she leaned against the headrest and closed her eyes. Her thoughts returned to the past, analyzing every detail, every warning sign she had stubbornly ignored. Now many things made sense. The habit of never leaving his phone face up on the table. Silent mode during their meetings. Refusing to travel together because management doesn't let him. All of it had been classic signs of a double life. But when it happens to you personally, the brain refuses to see the obvious. The car moved slowly through traffic. Outside, the city lights glowed in the dark. Alina felt a bitter longing for the life she had invented for herself. She had liked taking care of someone. She had liked feeling needed. Victor had skillfully filled that need, using her trust as a quiet harbor from his family problems. The taxi stopped by a tall wrought iron gate. The restaurant grounds were brightly lit. Luxury subs crowded the parking lot. Alina paid, stepped out of the car, and breathed in the fresh air scented with pine forest. Now she had to act carefully. Entering the grounds turned out to be easy. The guard at the entrance only glanced at her absent-mindedly. She headed toward the central building with large panoramic windows. Inside, soft music played. Waiters in white shirts moved quickly between the tables. She stayed on the spacious wooden terrace, looking into the brightly lit hall. Her heart pounded loudly, sending pulses through her temples. She searched for a familiar silhouette. There were many people. Laughter rang out, dishes clinked, and then she saw him. Victor was sitting by the window, his back to the entrance. He was wearing a dark suit, the kind Alina had seen only once before. Across from him sat Oksana. The makeup Alina had done looked flawless under the artificial light. The woman was talking animatedly, laughing, touching the man's hand. He listened, slightly tilting his head and nodding from time to time. Watching that idyllic scene was physically painful. As if someone were slowly twisting a knife under her ribs. Alina took out her phone, opened their chat, and saw that her last message still hadn't been read. She aimed the camera through the window, zoomed in, and took a clear picture. The profile of Victor and the happy face of his wife were visible in the shot. Her fingers didn't shake. She attached the image to a message. "Nice suit and makeup for your wife. I did a great job, didn't I? Drink the wine yourself. You can pick up your things from my apartment tomorrow. Leave the keys in the mailbox. Goodbye." She hit send. The message was delivered instantly. Alina kept her eyes on the table and saw Victor's phone light up. He lazily reached for it, picked it up, and looked at the text. What happened next was a small reward for everything she had endured. The man's posture suddenly stiffened, as if struck by electricity. His back straightened. He jerked his head around, eyes scanning the hall and then darting toward the dark panoramic windows. Alina stood in the shadows, hidden by decorative shrubs, and watched his panic. Watched the self-satisfied smile vanish. Watched the traitor quickly type something, trying to maintain a calm expression in front of Oksana. Then her own phone vibrated. An incoming call. Victor. She declined it, pressed block, and added the number to the blacklist. Then she turned and walked away from the restaurant. The rain, which had been gathering all evening, finally broke out in cold, fine drops. They ran down her face, mixing with the tears she no longer tried to hide. She walked along the dark roadside without calling another taxi, needing the physical strain to drown out the pain in her chest. 2 years of rebuilding herself after moving away from her parents. 2 years of learning how to live normally, healthily. All of it had been erased by one morning visit from a stranger. Ahead lay emptiness. Her old schedule was gone. She would have to learn to fall asleep alone, stop waiting for footsteps on the stairs, stop buying her favorite cheese for shared breakfasts. She would have to become strong again. The next morning began with a headache and swollen eyes. Alina forced herself out of bed, made strong coffee, and stood under the hot shower for a long time. The apartment felt. Men's slippers stood in the hallway. A toothbrush and razor were in the bathroom. On the kitchen wall hung a shelf Victor had installed last month. Methodically, she gathered all of her ex-lover's things into a large trash bag. Toothbrush, slippers, left-behind shirt, spare charger. She tied the bag in a tight knot and set it outside the door. The keys went there too. Her phone stayed silent. The blacklist registered dozens of blocked calls. Messengers overflowed with messages she refused to read, deleting the threads immediately. She didn't want excuses. There was no reason that could explain a double life. A week passed in a haze. Work saved her. Client appointments, brushes, foundation, and conversations about cosmetics created an illusion of normality. Alina took extra hours, worked until late evening, and came home so exhausted that she fell asleep immediately. Then, one Thursday evening, while she was closing the studio, a black car stopped by the entrance. The door opened, and Victor stepped onto the sidewalk. He looked worn out. Shadows had settled under his eyes, and his shirt was undone at the top button. He blocked her path, not letting her reach the bus stop. "We need to talk," he said hoarsely. Alina stopped. She felt no fear. Only a dull, sticky disgust. "We have nothing to talk about. Move. Listen to me. You misunderstood everything. What you saw, it was not what you think." Alina raised her eyes. In his face she saw despair and a pitiful, desperate hope. Not what I think. She asked quietly, feeling anger rise from the depths of her soul. I did makeup for your wife. She told me about the beautifully renovated bathroom, about the trips to Poltava, about what a caring husband you are. What exactly did I misunderstand? He stepped closer, trying to take her hand. She jerked away sharply. Don't touch me. We live like neighbors, he blurted out suddenly, losing control. You don't know the whole truth. Oksana and I have been strangers for a long time. I was going to divorce her. There were property issues, a shared business, the apartment. I couldn't leave just like that and end up with nothing. I planned to settle everything and then tell you. The classic excuse of a liar. There are always reasons. Children, property, illness, the right moment that never comes. You planned it, Alina repeated bitterly. So you celebrated your 10th anniversary in an expensive restaurant to divide property better? Or to lull the woman you supposedly live with like a neighbor? You know what's worst? You're not just a liar. You're a coward. He shouted that he loved her. That with Oksana it was only habit and duty. That she was the only one who made him feel alive. If that's love, then I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life, Alina cut him off. She walked around him, heading forward without hesitation. If you try to come near me or my work again, I'll send Oksana the restaurant photo and add the audio recording of our conversation. I'm sure the property division will go much faster then. The threat worked. His steps behind her went.